You work hard for your warehouse, but is your technology working as hard as you do? Don't you think your warehouse deserves that? Find that technology work ethic with the EPG One Unified Supply Chain Execution Suite that's built to arm warehouse leaders with tech that powers competitive edge. With modular solutions for WMS, WCS, TMS, workforce, doc, 3PL billing, control tower, and the number one voice picking solution named Lydia Voice, the EPG One suite gives you tech that works harder for your warehouse and the agility to help you scale with confidence and be built for what's next. Smarter, connected, and harder working logistics starts at epg.com. That's epg.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Tom Schmitt, and he is the new CEO over at Radial. And we're going to talk a little bit about his background, how he ended up at Radial, joining earlier this year. And we're also going to talk a little bit about what he's seeing in the fulfillment space and some of the challenges specifically around mid-market brands, and also the release of their new Fast Track program. And we're going to hear a little bit about what that is and why they came up with that and what it's addressing in the market. So, Tom, welcome to the show. How are you?
Kevin, good to be here. I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. Great to get you on the show and talk to you and meet you for the first time. Even though we just found out that you were in my backyard last night, and we didn't get to connect.
We could have done this live together in the same room today. Yeah, literally, I found out, of all places, I was probably a mile away from you for the last 48 hours until I flew back home to Toronto, but small world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I live close to a lot of warehouses, so I guess that's, fitting. There's definitely a lot of happenstance there. Yeah.
Warehouses are sexy, as it says back there on your T-shirt.
That's true. This guy knows. So we're already off to a good start here. That's very good. So, Tom, you are CEO over at Radial now. So I guess first off, for people maybe that are not familiar with Radial, why don't you give us just a brief overview of what Radial is and what it is that you all do?
Yeah, so Radial, let me just take you back a little bit to the mid-90s. So in the mid-90s, a gentleman called Michael Rubin started a company called GSI Commerce. And that's what ended up becoming Radial. But let me just kind of take you back to the mid-90s for a second.
Sure.
So this gentleman was one of those entrepreneurs, young geniuses, and he came up with a very compelling concept. He said, hey, there's this thing called the internet, and there's all these world-leading consumer brands that are selling their products, whether it's apparel, whether it's health and beauty products, whether it's cosmetics, and they sell it through stores. And he said, like, knocking at the doors of all of these large consumer brands, I can build you a web store. And most people are like, you can build me what? A web store where all of your customers can actually, in addition to going to all your stores, they can also go online. Again, we're talking mid-90s. And then they can look at all the lipsticks or all the skirts, and they can push a button and order one. And I built you that web store, dear consumer brand. I'm also going to hold these products in my warehouse. I'm also going to engage world-class companies that ship stuff like UPS or FedEx. and they're going to bring it to your home. And when you make that transaction possible, when I make that possible for you, I'm also going to link this to credit card providers so that payment happens. And by the way, in the unfortunate case that there has to be a return, I can enable that too. So I'm basically building you a completely new channel in addition to your brick and mortar business. And this is how GSI Commerce got started by Michael Rubin. This is how, in essence, the e-commerce fulfillment business got pioneered by him. And he built up this company, and at some point, when it had critical mass, sold it to eBay, which in turn sold it to a private equity firm. And then during that time, in the 2015 timeframe, it got renamed into Radial, which is what it is today. Yeah. But it's still, in essence, the same business that Michael Rubin started, where any consumer brand on earth can come to us and say, build me a web store. If they have a web store, can you hold the products? Can you transport it to a consumer to their home? Can you also make sure payment happens? We can also put fraud protection on top so that people actually get the product and then payment happens in exchange. And returns we also enable. So it's still basically a business to consumer fulfillment business where anything in that chain I just described, collectively or individually, a consumer brand could engage us for. So it's, and we were the pioneer in this space through Michael Rubin, and we're still the largest of the consumer fulfillment companies in North America.
Wow, actually, I didn't know all that history about Radial, and I think that's pretty remarkable because mid '90s. I mean, that was super early to be doing something like that. So I love that you say we went knocking on these consumer brands and being like, oh yeah, they can go on the internet and look at it, and they're like, what? How is that even possible, right? That must be some kind of magic at that point, right?
Yeah, clearly a pioneer, a trailblazer who created something that didn't exist at the time.
Absolutely. So now tell us a little bit about you, because you recently joined Radial, I think in earlier this year, like in May or March, right? So tell us a little bit about kind of your background and how that's kind of led you now to Radial in this next chapter of your career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're right, Kevin. I'm the rookie here still at Radial. I'm barely 5 months in. I'm not a rookie in the space, though. So let me just take you very briefly back to all the way to the beginning. So I always tell people I was born and raised in the Deep South.
Okay.
And people look at me and then say, "Off Germany," which is true. And but I always get this reaction like, "You don't sound like a Southerner." But I do sound like a Southerner from the southern part of Germany, close to the Austrian border. And I always had this dream of coming to America. I listened to Casey Kasem's Top 40 and Reach for the Stars, and that resonated with me. I came to the States in 1989, so it's been quite a while. I'm a very proud and fortunate U.S. citizen. And early on, after graduate school in Boston, when I joined a consulting firm called McKinsey, I happened to be in their Atlanta office, and my first clients were transportation companies.
Okay.
I just talked, a railroad, a parcel company, a pallet manufacturer, a forwarding company. And so I became the transportation guy and the transportation practice guy, amongst others, in the Atlanta McKinsey office. And then, of course, hired away by FedEx in 1998. And then got to lead FedEx supply chain, who actually competed with Radial. So similar business, fulfillment business. So I got to know Radial 15, 18, 20 years ago when I competed against them for customer business. And then fast forward, when I went back to my first home to Germany with DB Schenker in running their contract logistics business globally, I once again competed against Radial. So the company has been quite a good part of my professional life for 2 decades, but as a competitor. But I've known them, and I frankly respected them a lot, the way they showed up professionally, also for their operational excellence. And then one of my former FedEx colleagues, Craig Simon, actually led Radial just before I got there. And I hired him into FedEx. He ran FedEx supply chain after I handed off the baton to him. when he led FedEx supply chain after me. And we this time did it the other way around. He handed off the baton to me to take on Radial. So it was a company that I admired and competed against for 2 decades. And I was fortunate enough to actually now join their ranks and became a teammate of the people that I competed against for 2 decades. So again, rookie to the company, not rookie to the industry, and a big admirer from the distance. And now I'm fortunate enough to be a part of that team.
Very interesting, and a very interesting journey there too as well. I'm curious, starting back in 1989 timeframe, right, to now. Obviously, there's been a ton of change within the distribution, fulfillment, warehousing industry. So, I'm curious from your perspective and everything that you've seen, like what stands out is like maybe the biggest catalyst of change to get the industry to where we are today.
Fulfillment, it's become a huge part of the customer experience. I mean, if you just think about you and me as a consumer, again, when Michael Rubin started the e-commerce fulfillment business and the direct to your home distribution business, the experience before then was different, right? When you and I went shopping before, we went to a brick and mortar store. We still do that sometimes, but as we all know, more and more business gets transacted electronically and the packages show up on our doorstep. So first of all, the first big shift was this whole notion of how you shop is no longer you and me going to a mall necessarily, almost exclusively. We actually now do some of that to get a customer experience that perhaps is more of a trying things out, tasting things. And it's a lot of retailers have gone through a lot over the last decade to make sure that in-person experience still is relevant for experience, tasting, touching things, trying things on. But at the same time, that whole way of doing business where the good comes to your home has become such an instrumental part of commerce. And now when you say like, okay, let's double click on no longer going to a store, but getting the good to your home, imagine the sophistication of that. Early on, you ordered something, and then sometime over the next week or so, it would show up. You and I were completely in the dark initially, kind of when it would show up. And now we fast forward to today, you can be very specific about, I need this after hours. I'm not going to be home during the day. And I'm in a neighborhood where I don't trust this to just sit on my doorstep for 5-6 hours. So it needs to be there between 6 and 8 p.m. And by the way, I want to be able to also look up the same way I'm looking up where my Uber driver is right now. Like, where is it right now? Is it still on track for 6 to 8 p.m.? And then I've got a sudden change where there's an emergency that I have to tend to. And now I cannot no longer be at home until very late in the night. So I need to either reroute this to my new destination, where I'm going to be, or I need to suddenly tell them, like, stop delivery, show up the next day, 6 to 8 p.m. is still a good time, but not today. It now has to be tomorrow. All of that kind of real-time changing customer experience of the package showing up when it really is convenient to me is something that was hard to imagine how you could actually construct for that 20, 25, 30 years ago. The other thing is then think about, obviously it has to be the correct order. If you order 2 or 3 items from the same manufacturer, it has to be the right size, the right color. All 3 items have to be the exact same items that you ordered. They have to be undamaged. So that's obviously huge. And then also you want to make very certain that if I'm not at home, but I trust that it can be left on my doorstep, with the delivery, you want to get a picture of that front patio where the package actually is sitting. All of these things make up for a customer experience that's, when done well, is freaking phenomenal and makes you want to reorder because, hey, they're super flexible. They come when it's convenient to me, when I'm at home. Even if I trust them to leave the package when I'm not at home, I get a proof of delivery texted to me with a screenshot of the package on the doorstep. So there's a lot of sophistication that makes for a really rich customer experience. When you do this well, that you get this product to you when it's convenient to you, undamaged, with a very kind of easy to use proof behind it. This is customer experience at its best, but this is where the fulfillment industry needs to be today and going forward. And again, that's a quantum leap from 1995, Mike Rubin's early days, where you clicked something and then you kept your fingers crossed for the next week that something would show up at some point that's unknown to you, and it would be undamaged and would still be on the doorstep when you came home from your errand. So that's come a long way. Yeah,
absolutely. And I can feel your passion for the industry as you talk about that and the customer experience there. But I'm curious, I mean, back then when you first got involved in this industry, back at McKinsey there, you mentioned, I mean, did you ever think that we would be at this point in this industry, like, and have the technology to be able to do these types of things like you're talking about, like, reroute like on the fly or be so precise with a delivery? I mean, did you ever think that was possible back then?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you asking the question, where's my stuff, too often? Whether it's in your own warehouses, from your suppliers, or in your customer network, if you're not sure where your stuff is, then Surge Air has the solution for you. With Surge Air's 99.9% accuracy, you're getting more than just supply chain visibility. You're getting the ability to orchestrate your supply chain and guide decisions in real time. Reduce the chaos in your supply chain and find operational truth with Surge Air. Find your visibility and learn more at surgeair.com. That's surgeair.com.
Yeah, so I mean, I have no monopoly to wisdom, nor do I have perfect foresight.
Sure.
I have been fortunate that I've been part of teams that were quite innovative and creative about kind of looking around the corner. Thinking back to my FedEx days when I was becoming kind of part of the FedEx supply chain organization, which I ultimately led for 3 years. FedEx was actually, and part of it goes back to FedEx's founder, Fred Schmitt, who unfortunately just passed away last month.
Yeah.
So FedEx and Fred Schmitt personally has very close relationships with the military. Fred was a Marine. He flew 2 missions to Vietnam. And a lot of the discipline that he brought to the FedEx processes of consistency and rigor go back to his military days and his military education. So we as FedEx, the military is a big customer, we did a lot of things together with the military. And if you think about, so when you go to have to deliver ammunition or weapons in some cases to a theater of war, like literally where the battlefield is, and you send it somewhere, well, there's no postal address. Like it's somewhere in the middle of a war battle territory and somewhere in, hopefully that is not happening too much and in too many places, but just imagine some place in a war zone and you need to deliver ammunition to it. Well, first of all, there's no address. And secondly, when it gets there, the recipient may not be where they were when you were getting the order, right? They're moving along that theater of war.
Sure.
So in that case, that whole notion of kind of routing in transit, rerouting in transit, and making sure you update the address on a constant basis, that informed the FedEx thinking about if we can figure that out for as difficult a situation as delivering ammunition to the troops in a theater of war, if we can figure this out, yes, then we can also figure out reroute in transit where we actually are not in a war zone, where we have real postal addresses, and we just shifted from one postal address to another postal address, right? So some of these innovative ways get informed by just being creative about trying to figure out to be successful in the most difficult situations that you can possibly conceive. It's a bit like when you can solve that, you can take that back to a much more simple and more predictable environment fairly easily.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's interesting just to see that evolution. I mean, you've been in the industry longer than me, but even like in the time that I've been in, 13 years or so, I mean, to see the advancements in the evolution of how these things are happening, I think is pretty incredible. And I think it's pretty exciting and pretty cool too, that we get to see it and be a part of that. So if we look at kind of current day state of fulfillment, what do you see are some of the biggest challenges right now for like mid-market brands that are trying to figure out fulfillment and trying to figure out how to meet those consumer expectations that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, I think if you're a mid-market brand or even a new brand or a kind of, in some cases, we even now serve startup organizations.
Sure.
It's an interesting mix, right? So I personally, I have invested in startup organizations. I've never had the guts to actually start a company from scratch. I mean, because you are, initially, you basically have every single function in your company, right? You are the CEO. You're also the frontline person. You're also you're the designer of a product. You have to figure out the logistics. You have to figure out the finances and cash flow. So when you're a startup company and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people, I mean, you pretty much between the 5 of you, you do everything, including figuring out, okay, so let's start this in the garage. And then let's buy some inventory or let's manufacture it somewhere, perhaps even in the garage. And then we need to ship it somewhere. So what you need to realize is like what's core, what's not core. Are you a design company? Are you a manufacturing company? Are you a logistics company? Most of these companies that become our customers, when they started, they were thinking of new products. They were creating new products. They were designing them, and they figured out a way to manufacture them. Initially, just because they just started, they also were the logistics company. Well, we just use UPS or FedEx or DHL or one of the smaller players like Vio, and we ship this stuff, right? But at some point, when you start becoming a small, medium-sized enterprise, when you go from a startup to a $10 million company, a $50 million company, at some point, there's scale, and this fulfillment thing is no longer you basically having the UPS guy stop by your garage and picking up 10 orders and shipping them. This becomes a little bit more of a higher volume, higher scale game. And this is, I think, when you're as a small, medium-sized company, you need to figure out to keep the main thing. Like, what is it that that you stand for, that you're really, really extraordinarily good at? And where do you need the professionals come in? And this is where, certainly when you start becoming a $50 million revenue company, you start shifting. You say like, okay, I'm the mastermind of the product. I'm designing it. I'm specifying kind of what the ingredients need to be, but I don't need to be the logistics company. Somebody else should be doing what Michael Rubin thought about, the founder of GSI Commerce, what's today Radial, what he thought about 30 years ago. Let them do that. Let them be the fulfillment company that creates the customer experience that I was just talking about 5 minutes ago, right? That is spectacularly wowing. And if I'm the small, medium-sized company, I'm focusing on what I'm good at, what I stand for, and that's not fulfillment. But I think it takes a certain maturity to understand what's core and what's not core, and where what's not core to you is something that is core to somebody else. Like, we are in the fulfillment business. I oftentimes tell my team, when we deal with customers, yes, we should ask them kind of exactly kind of what makes them successful, and we need to make it lighter for them to be successful, not heavier. But then we need to be the professionals in our space, and we need to say, okay, for that experience to happen, we're going to come up with the right solutions. We're going to use the right transportation companies. We use the right services. But it's a huge deal for these companies to recognize what they stand for and where they need professional companies to supplement them. And when you are the startup company and initially you did everything, it's probably in some cases even hard to let go. The first time we have prospects come to us, and when they ask us about Radial and what we can do for them, and then when we ask them, like, who's doing it for you right now? Well, we're doing it. We have this extended garage, and then for them to take that, what they had direct control over, and hand it over to us, they need to obviously trust us that now they basically handed over their baby, part of it at least, to us. And so we need to nail this and get this right and be the upgrade that they were hoping for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting you talk about the garage. I just talked to somebody yesterday and they're telling me about the journey of their brand and how they started in the bedroom, then they upgrade to the living room, and they upgrade to the garage. And then finally they were able to get to like a fulfillment space. But yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting to see that progression. And I mean, I think you have a great point there where, like companies like yourself, like Radial is focused on fulfillment. Like that's what they do. And at some point that brand needs to trust somebody else to take on that part so they can focus on continuing to grow their business and developing products, marketing, et cetera, making sure that those sales are coming. So, the fulfillment then can just happen. Right. So I'm curious along those lines. I mean, when you look at these brands, at what point are you seeing that they are starting to look at outsourcing fulfillment? I guess maybe 2 points here. I mean, one is at what point are they starting to look, but at what point do you recommend they should start to look and start to consider outsourcing fulfillment?
So again, because the natural tendency, especially if you've grown the company from the very early days, is just keep doing what you've been doing, which is pretty much running your entire business, the whole thing, including the fulfillment part. Statistically, what you see is the breaking point is when companies, and this is obviously slightly different for an automotive spare parts company to an apparel company, but if you run an average across industry verticals, somewhere in the $50 million revenue space is where it starts tilting from where companies primarily do the fulfillment internally to where companies start primarily to use others to do the fulfillment. And by the way, this does not have to be a black or white. We have a lot of customers who do some of it internally, and then they augment it with fulfillment companies in other parts. Some of them have their home country, they have critical mass. They feel like they got also a scale and a size as a company where they can hire kind of a whole department, but then they go to other markets and we don't have critical mass here. We need to use a third party. So there's different ways to think about it. But overall, when it's somewhere a $50 million top line company, fulfillment tends to be something that they entrust a partner with.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it is, you have a great point there. They've been building it and before, like I said, it's their baby kind of, and it's like, how do you give control? I mean, it's almost like, when you actually have a kid and you're like, it's time to let them go off to daycare or school. It's a little hard, right? Somebody else is going to be in control for a little bit. But, recognizing when to do that, I think is hard, right? Because you get in kind of this rhythm and the motion of like, okay, yeah, we work on this in the morning and then the afternoon we're just shipping the orders and figuring that out. But at some point it does break, right? Because it becomes too much and then you lose sight of actually focusing on the product and things like that. So really interesting perspective there. And so now Radial has recently come out with this new program, Fast Track. So tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of the why behind this program as well.
Yeah. So the headline is, Kevin, Radial, I've always looked at it as like Fast Track is Radial made easy. Okay. And let me tell you what I mean by that. So go back to the days when I competed against Radial. The one thing that there were some headlines. Radial always was operationally excellent. I just looked at the numbers last week. Our order accuracy last week was 99.9%. So nice. Just to put that in specific terms, if a customer placed 1,000 orders with us for their customers, and an order could be 3 items. It could be blue socks and a red shirt and underpants in white. And then you obviously have to have the right sizes and the right colors in a box. And when we do this 1,000 times, 99.9% order accuracy means 999 out of 1,000 times. It's the exact right combination of products in the right color and sizes in that box. So we are not perfect, but I do believe, even though with my own background, in the industry. We're not perfect, but we're the best there is. And we're striving to get better and better. And that one order out of 1,000, that is not the right combination of size, product, and color drives us nuts, because we want that to be 1,000 out of 1,000. We always strive for perfection. We're never going to get there, but we want to be as close to it as possible. So what is Radial Fast Track? The one kind of negative halo effect that I've heard about Radial from time to time is they're really, really good, but they're hard to do business with. And when you double click on that, what customers meant with that is, gosh, yes, you're getting into our business, you're designing the solution specifically for us, that's great, but it takes weeks, it takes months, it takes a solution design and implementation team on both sides. And can you just make it somehow lighter for us to become a customer of yours, where it doesn't take months of solution design and implementation and onboarding? And so with Radial Fast Track, what we did was, think of almost like when you walk into a McDonald's and you look at that menu, the salads, the burgers, the desserts, and you can go in there and you can click this salad with these toppings, and you can click that burger with that cheddar cheese and mustard and what. But what you do is you click any combination. It could be one thing or it could be multiple things. Think of Radial. It could be the web store. It could be the fulfillment. It could be the transportation. It could be the fraud protection. It could be the returns. Certainly the payment process. But you could pick any of these things, but they have to be on that menu. If I cannot go into that McDonald's and say but I want a lamb burger. Well, there's no lamb burger on that menu. And and the same thing with Radial Fast Track. It's standardized components inside a menu, and a customer can have any combination, all of these things or one of these things, as long as they're on that menu. And then we have a set of technology partners that basically make sure that they can use that menu, and whatever systems our customers are running, we have basically a connector with these technology partners that makes it that we can plug in on this side, the customer gets a plug in on that side, and there's connection between their order flows and what happens inside our building and what happens on the road and what happens with the payment process. So it's basically Radial made easy. And our aspiration was, whether you want fulfillment, whether you want transportation, whether you want fraud protection, whether you want returns, whether you want all of it, some of it, we want this to be so plug and play and so standardized that between you signing a contract with us for that and you going live, this could be happening within a week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A week. In the past, we're talking months, 2 months, 3, 4 months. Here, the aspiration is you sign a contract and you can go live within a week. Well, we brought 6 customers in the first couple of months. We took them live. It all happened in less than 4 weeks each. And by the way, if it was more than a week, it was typically because the customer had to change their processes and we had to wait for them to get the inbound inventory into our warehouses. So if it took longer from a contract to going live than a week, it's because, again, they just had to start changing their process first. Yeah. It took a while and then get the inventory into the warehouse. But the aspiration for us was Radial made easy. It's so easy. You can have any of these things or all of them, sign a contract with us, and you can go live a week or two later. And it's happened now 6 times, pretty much flawlessly. Our customers are delighted. And we just got a large for us as a fast track deal. We got a modern brand called White Fox, very popular brand.
Oh, sure.
Australia-based company, and they wanted to have a stronger presence in North America. They started working with us in Indianapolis. They went live a couple of months ago, and it's going hugely successfully well. We had a video which we showed at the Investor Day of our parent company in Belgium. And if you look at the eyes of our customers, they were like just bright and so excited that the smiles were there. So this fast track truly is Radial made easy. It was a concept until a few months ago. Now it's a beautiful reality for 6 companies already. The next 5 are signed, 15 are in the negotiations process right now. This thing is spooling up very, very quickly. And again, it's the same excellence that people have known to love from Radial, but it's delivered in a very easy way. And the standardization has another huge benefit. When you think of a multi-year journey, sometimes you need updates and upgrades. Think of your iPhone. Think of your operating system. There's 2.0, then there's 3.0, then there's, again, we're like now iPhone number 16 or whatever number we're at. When you have something that's standardized on that menu, and it's not a one-off for this customer, another one-off for that customer, it's much more efficient and effective to update and upgrade, right? Because I'm taking these modules on that menu, they're the same standardized product, and I'm updating or upgrading that. It's so much more efficient than every single customer having their one-off solution, and I'm updating and upgrading as many versions as there are customers. That's not what's the case here with Fast Track. It's standardized. So I'm doing one update or upgrade because it's the same standardized fulfillment solution or transportation solution. So standardization has a huge benefit of much more efficient and cost-effective updating and upgrading.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think, that from contract to go live in 1 week, I mean, is super fast. And so I think the fast and fast track is certainly warranted there. And I can imagine that's especially appealing to brands where maybe they're having a poor experience with an existing 3PL, right? And they want to get out quickly. And oftentimes that can be kind of a challenging task, right? Because, either the 3PL is not ready, they need to make space, they need to figure out what it's going to look like from a system perspective. So, being able to have that quick kind of get up and running really can help on the brand perspective, especially because they don't want to have disruption with their customers, right? I mean, if they're having a problem with their fulfillment partner or logistics or something like that, like the customer doesn't care, right? The customer's just like, you just didn't give me my order on time, right? I don't care if the truck broke down or something like that. So, I think that's really incredible that you've been able to kind of figure that out and that it's being successful and has traction, definitely. And I can see why, because, that time is so quick and so important to be able to still have those smooth running operations and order flow to be able to go for that brand. So very interesting how you've put that together and made that happen. So now as we look as we talked a little bit about kind of the evolution of the industry and what you've seen and some of the challenges currently. Now, let's look at the future a little bit and give us your perspective, your thinking. What do you think the fulfillment landscape is going to look like over the next 3 years?
I believe what I described before, that exceptional experience, I think we will keep changing what's possible. And frankly, some of the best competitors will kind of keep us sharp. We like winning, and we only will win as long as we're the most compelling option for our prospects and customers. So I think you will see more and more that reality that's starting to come in, that fulfillment and the way fulfillment actually happens really drives and defines customer experience. You will see that become more and more pronounced, where at some point you can say fulfillment is the customer experience. That process that I described before about where you have a very easy way of clicking, then from there you can follow very easily kind of what's happening. And any time you need to adjust or change kind of the location, the timing, or so you can do this. You can rely on it. You get the proof of delivery. It's in your text the moment the package gets dropped on the front porch. So that notion of fulfillment is the customer experience is going to go to a whole next level. And again, you have the technology as an enabler basically becoming even more relevant than it has been. I mentioned FedEx before. Fred Smith, the founder, I mean, one of his, I think, just brilliant early insights was the information about the package is as important as the package itself.
Yeah.
That's also the case with fulfillment in the broader scale, right? I mean, you just want to be informed about kind of what's happening with my order. Where is it? Okay, it's there. It feels good to see it here. And it looks like the box is completely intact the way it's intended to be. So the short answer, Kevin, would have been fulfillment is the customer experience. That is what you will be seeing more and more.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that, and that's a great quote right there. I'll say fulfillment is customer experience, and I think we're seeing more of that, and especially as more of, I mean, even the older generations, but especially the younger generations are so heavily high percentage relying on just online e-commerce to do their shopping, right, and get those products. That becomes the only touch point in some cases for some brands to have with their customer, right? So that experience needs to be dialed in. It needs to be good and needs to be flexible as well. Just like, I can go to the store when I want to go to the store, right? I want to get my package when I want to get my package, right? So, I think having that experience is translating so much more to that fulfillment side, like you said. And I think that's a great way to sum it up there. So very great to talk to you here today, Tom, and learn a little bit about your perspectives on the fulfillment world, the history of your background, and some of the history of Radial too, which is super interesting as well, and how you're rolling out this fast track program and how it's building up, and also looking into the future as well. So if people are interested in learning more about Radial or learning more about the fast track program, what's the best way to do that?
One good way is go on radial.com. We have a good website that gives you a pretty good sense. You get to see like live impressions of some of what I just described. And yeah, we just want to keep changing what's possible in the fulfillment space, and we're doing that right now. We are getting a lot of attention. And as I said before, just to be also very, I guess, self-conscious in a positive way, we are not perfect. We never will be perfect, but we strive to get as close as humanly possible to that notion. So, watch us, contact us, knock at our door. We'd love to just keep changing what's possible for all of these prospects and customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And 99.9% is pretty damn good, I'll say. So I think that's good.
We're still going after that last 0.1, but yes, for now, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll put all that information about Radial at thenewwarehouse.com, as well as in the show notes, so people can easily find it. So Tom, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Enjoyed this episode? Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, and for more content from the New Warehouse, find us on LinkedIn and YouTube. Links to subscribe can be found in the show notes, and for everything The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com.